The days following the battle were a blur of rebuilding and reflection. Silver Ridge, once a quiet mountain town, now stood as a symbol of humanity's resilience. The streets were filled with people working together to clear debris, repair homes, and care for the wounded. Though the scars of war remained visible, there was an undeniable sense of hope in the air, a belief that they had turned a corner, not just as individuals, but as a species. Ethan walked through the town, his glowing, hands dimmed but still faintly pulsing with energy. He paused near what used to be Claire's farm, now reduced to charred fields and broken fences. Claire herself was nearby, using her telekinetic abilities to lift heavy beams and stack them neatly for reconstruction. Despite her exhaustion, she smiled when she saw him approach. "How are you holding up?" Ethan asked, his voice gentle. Claire shrugged, brushing dirt from her hands. "It's hard, losing everything I worked for, but at least we're alive. That's more than most people can say after all this." She gestured toward the horizon, where smoke still lingered from the battles. "Besides, it's not like we're alone anymore. Everyone here is family now." Ethan nodded, though his thoughts drifted back to Jake and the others who hadn't survived. Their sacrifices weighed heavily on him, a constant reminder of the cost of their awakening. Still, he knew they couldn't dwell on the past, not when so much depended on the future. Emma joined them moments later, carrying a notebook filled with sketches and notes. Since the ritual, she had taken it upon herself to document everything they had learned about their powers and the architect's technology. Her goal was simple: to ensure that humanity never forgot its history or repeated its mistakes. "We need to start organizing," Emma said, flipping through her notes. "Not just for defense, but for rebuilding. If we're going to reclaim our place among the stars, we'll need systems in place to keep things running smoothly." Nathan, who had been overseeing supply distribution, chimed in. "We also need to think about how we present ourselves to the rest of the world. Governments are watching us closely. Some see us as heroes, others as threats. If we don't handle this carefully, we could end up causing more problems than we solve." Emma agreed. "That's why we need leadership. People who can guide us without letting power go to their heads. Humanity's potential is incredible, but it's also dangerous. We have to be smart about how we use it." As the weeks passed, Silver Ridge became a hub of activity. Awakened humans from across the globe traveled to the town, drawn by stories of its victory against the alien invaders. They came seeking answers, training, and a sense of belonging. The townspeople welcomed them, sharing what they had learned, and helping newcomers adjust to their new abilities. Training sessions became a daily routine, led by Ethan and other experienced fighters. They taught newcomers how to control their powers, emphasizing discipline and teamwork over brute force. For many, it was the first time they felt truly understood, like they weren't alone in their struggles. Among the arrivals was a young woman named Mia, whose ability to manipulate sound had caused her nothing but trouble before she arrived. At first, she struggled to control her powers, accidentally shattering windows and deafening those around her whenever she got upset. But under Ethan's guidance, she learned to channel her emotions into music, creating harmonies that soothed even the most troubled minds. "I never thought my power could be useful," Mia admitted one evening, sitting beside Ethan as they watched the sunset. "I always saw it as a curse, but now I think I finally understand what it means to be human." Ethan smiled, though his expression remained thoughtful. Being human isn't about perfection. It's about growth, learning from our mistakes, and finding ways to make things better. That's what we're doing here. Despite the progress, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Not everyone agreed on how humanity should move forward. Some argued for aggressive expansion, believing that their newfound abilities entitled them to claim territory beyond Earth. Others advocated for caution, warning that unchecked ambition could lead to the same destruction that had prompted the architects to intervene in the first place. The debate came to a head during a meeting held in the underground chamber. Representatives from various groups gathered to discuss the path ahead, their voices echoing off the stone walls. Ethan, Emma, and Nathan stood at the center trying to mediate the increasingly heated discussion. "We can't afford to divide ourselves," Emma insisted, her tone firm. "The aliens may have retreated, but they'll be back, and next time they might bring reinforcements. If we're not united, we won't stand a chance." A man named Victor, who had recently arrived from Europe, shook his head. "Unity sounds nice, but it's not realistic. Humans have always competed for resources and power. Why should that change now?" "Because we've seen what happens when we let greed and fear rule us," Ethan replied, stepping forward. His glowing hands caught the light, drawing everyone's attention. "We destroyed worlds, wiped out civilizations, and nearly destroyed ourselves. Is that really the legacy we want to leave behind?" Victor crossed his arms, unconvinced. "And what's your plan? Sit around singing songs of peace while the universe moves on without us?" "No," Ethan said, his voice rising. "My plan is to build something better, to take everything we've learned, the good and the bad, and use it to create a future worth fighting for. But we can't do that if we're too busy tearing each other apart." The room fell silent as his words sank in. Slowly, some of the attendees began nodding in agreement. Even Victor seemed to soften, though he didn't speak again. In the weeks that followed, Ethan, Emma, and Nathan worked tirelessly to establish a framework for governance. They formed councils made up of representatives from different regions, ensuring that no single group held too much power. Training programs expanded, focusing not just on combat, but on diplomacy, science, and culture. The goal was clear: to prepare humanity, not just for survival, but for greatness. Meanwhile, reports continued to trickle in from space. The alien fleet had regrouped near the edge of the solar system, their movements monitored by satellites and awakened humans capable of sensing energy fluctuations. It was only a matter of time before they returned, and everyone knew it. One evening, as Ethan stood atop a hill overlooking the town, Emma joined him. She carried a small device in her hand, one of the artifacts recovered from the chamber. Its surface shimmered faintly, responding to her touch. "What's that?" Ethan asked, nodding toward the object. "It's a communicator," Emma explained. "Or at least, that's what I think it is. If I'm right, we might be able to use it to reach out to the architects, to ask for guidance." Ethan frowned. "Do you really think they'll help us, after everything they did to suppress us?" "I don't know," Emma admitted. "But we won't find out unless we try. Besides, maybe it's time we stop seeing them as enemies. They tried to protect the galaxy from us, but maybe they underestimated how much we've changed." Ethan sighed, gazing at the stars. "You're probably right. Either way, we can't keep relying on scraps of information from old manuscripts and alien tech. If we're going to survive, we need answers." Emma placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression resolute. "Then let's get them. Together." The R. Next morning, the entire town gathered in the underground chamber. Emma stood at the center, holding the artifact aloft. Around her, hundreds of awakened humans formed a circle, their combined energy amplifying the device's glow. As she activated it, a beam of light shot upward, piercing the ceiling and continuing into the sky. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the air shimmered, and a figure materialized before them. An architect, tall and luminous, its elongated limbs and glowing skin radiating an aura of calm authority. The crowd gasped, some stepping back in awe while others moved closer, eager to hear what it had to say. "You have awakened," the architect said, its voice resonating like a chorus. "Tell me, children of Earth, are you ready to face the consequences of your actions?" Emma stepped forward, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. We're not the same as we were before. We've learned from our mistakes, and we're ready to take responsibility for our place in the universe. The architect studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. Prove yourselves worthy, and perhaps the galaxy will welcome you as equals. Fail, and you will face extinction. With that, the figure vanished, leaving the crowd in stunned silence. Ethan turned to Emma, his eyes filled with determination. So, he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. What's next? Emma grinned, clutching the artifact tightly. We show the universe that humanity isn't just a sleeping god, we're a guardian. And with that, humanity took its first steps toward a brighter future, united by purpose and driven by hope. The aftermath of the battle left Silver Ridge scarred, but alive. Smoke curled into the sky from smoldering wreckage, and the once quiet town now bore the marks of war, crumbled buildings, shattered streets, and the somber faces of its people. Yet amidst the destruction, a spark of hope remained. The townspeople had fought together, proving that their newfound powers could be used not just for chaos, but for something greater: unity. Ethan stood at the edge of what used to be the main square, his hands trembling as he stared at the ruins around him. Jake's sacrifice weighed heavily on his mind, a constant reminder of the cost of their awakening. He clenched his fists, willing himself to stay strong. There was still work to do, battles to fight, and lives to protect. But deep down, he wondered if humanity was truly ready for this responsibility. Were they strong enough to wield such power without repeating the mistakes of their ancestors? Emma approached him, her steps slow and deliberate. She carried the old manuscript in her arms, its pages now worn and frayed from constant use. We did it, she said softly, though her voice lacked triumph. But we're not done yet. Ethan turned to face her, his expression grim. Is this what the architects were afraid of? Us tearing each other apart, or letting others destroy us because we couldn't control ourselves? Emma hesitated before answering. Maybe. Or maybe they underestimated us. They thought locking away our powers would solve everything, but look where that got us. Now we have to decide what kind of future we want, not just for ourselves, but for everyone. Nathan joined them moments later, his face lined with exhaustion. Despite his lack of visible abilities, he had become an integral part of the group, organizing defenses, strategizing attacks, and keeping morale high. Reports are coming in from other towns, he said. The aliens are regrouping. If we don't act soon, they'll come back stronger. We can't keep fighting like this, Ethan replied. Every skirmish costs us more lives. We need a way to end this for good. Emma opened the manuscript again, flipping through its fragile pages. Her fingers paused over a section written in faded ink, detailing a ritual described as the Final Awakening. According to the text, it required participants to channel their emotions, fear, anger, joy, grief, into a single moment of absolute focus. When performed correctly, it would unlock humanity's full potential, restoring their ancient abilities while granting them clarity and purpose. It's risky, Emma admitted. If even one person loses control during the ritual, it could destabilize everything. But if we succeed, we'll stand a chance against them, Ethan finished, determination hardening his voice. Let's do it. The preparation took days. Word spread quickly, drawing awakened humans from neighboring towns and cities to Silver Ridge. What had started as a small group of locals grew into a gathering of hundreds, each person bringing their unique abilities to the table. Some could manipulate fire or water. Others moved objects with their minds or healed wounds with a touch. Together they formed an army unlike any Earth had ever seen. Claire, who had lost her farm to the invasion, became a leader among the newcomers, using her telekinesis to organize supplies and fortify the town's defenses. Others followed her example, pooling their resources and skills to prepare for the final confrontation. The atmosphere was tense but focused, driven by a shared sense of purpose. As the day of the ritual approached, Ethan called everyone to the underground chamber where it all began. The massive machine at its center hummed faintly, its cracks repaired, but still visible, a testament to the fragility of their situation. Standing atop a raised platform, Ethan addressed the crowd, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "This isn't just about winning a war," he said, meeting the eyes of those gathered. "It's about deciding who we are. We've been given a second chance to rise above our past, to protect instead of destroy. Today, we take that step together." Emma stepped forward next, holding up the manuscript. "The ritual will test us," she warned. "It demands honesty, trust, and unity. If we let fear or doubt take hold, we risk losing everything. But if we focus, if we believe in each other, we can awaken fully and face whatever comes next." One by one, the participants formed a circle around the machine, linking hands to create a chain of connection. Claire stood beside Ethan, her grip firm and reassuring. Nathan, though unsure of his role, placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, offering silent support. The air crackled with anticipation as the ritual began. Emma recited the incantation from the manuscript, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. As she spoke, the machine responded, glowing brighter with each word. Energy surged through the chamber, flowing between the participants like a river of light. Memories long buried rose to the surface, visions of ancient battles, forgotten, worlds, and the sacrifices made to seal humanity's powers away. For Ethan, the experience was overwhelming. He saw flashes of his own life intertwined with images of warriors clad in radiant armor, wielding weapons forged from stars. He felt their pain, their pride, and their resolve. Tears streamed down his face as he realized the truth. They weren't just reclaiming their abilities. They were reclaiming their identity. Around him, others experienced similar revelations. Claire saw herself standing on a battlefield, commanding armies with a flick of her wrist. Nathan, though devoid of obvious powers, felt a surge of insight, understanding strategies and tactics, as if they had always been part of him. Even those who doubted their place in the fight found strength in the shared vision, their doubts replaced by determination. The energy reached a crescendo, filling the chamber with blinding light. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Then, with a deafening roar, the machine shattered, releasing a wave of pure power that swept through the room. When the light faded, the participants stood transformed, not just physically but mentally and emotionally. Above ground, the alien fleet returned, descending upon Silver Ridge with renewed ferocity. Their ships unleashed devastating barrages, reducing entire sections of the town to rubble. But this time, humanity was ready. Led by Ethan and Emma, the awakened humans launched a coordinated counterattack. Fire rained from the skies as some wielded elemental forces, while others created impenetrable barriers to shield their allies. Telekinetic blasts sent enemy ships spiraling out of control, and bursts of speed allowed fighters to evade attacks with ease. The battle was fierce, but humanity's newfound unity gave them an edge. At the heart of the conflict, Ethan faced off against the alien commander, a towering figure encased in shimmering armor. Its weapons glowed with deadly energy, but Ethan stood his ground, drawing on every ounce of strength and focus he had gained during the ritual. With a final cry, he unleashed a wave of golden light that engulfed the commander, disintegrating its armor and leaving it vulnerable. The rest of the fleet faltered, retreating into the void from which they came. When the dust settled, silence fell over the battlefield. Exhausted but victorious, the survivors gathered in what remained of the town square. Ethan looked around at the faces of those who had fought alongside him, feeling a mixture of pride and sorrow. They had won, but the cost had been high. Emma, approached him, her expression soft but resolute. "This is just the beginning," she said. "We've reclaimed our place among the stars, but now we have to prove we deserve it." Ethan nodded, his gaze turning toward the horizon. "We'll make sure it doesn't happen again. No more wars, no more destruction. This time, we'll be better." As the sun rose over Silver Ridge, casting its light on the battered landscape, humanity took its first steps toward a new era. United by their shared struggle, they vowed to honor the sacrifices made and build a future worthy of their legacy. The sleeping gods had awakened, and this time they would rise not as conquerors, but as guardians. The silence in the chamber was short-lived. Just as the townspeople began to celebrate their success in stabilizing the suppression field, a low rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. The machine at the center of the room flickered and groaned, its surface cracking under the strain of holding back the immense energy it had been tasked with containing. Ethan, still on his knees, felt a sharp tug in his chest, as if the machine were calling out to him again. "We didn't fix it," he said, his voice strained. "We just delayed the inevitable." Emma knelt beside him, her eyes darting between the machine and the manuscript. She flipped through the pages frantically, searching for any hint of what might come next. Her hands trembled as she read aloud fragments of text that described a final stage, the complete collapse of the suppression field and the awakening of humanity's full potential. "The architects designed this field to last forever," Emma explained, her voice tight with urgency. "But now that it's breaking, there's no way to stop it completely. All we can do is prepare for what happens when it's gone." "What exactly happens?" Nathan asked, his tone sharp. He had seen enough strange things over the past few hours to know better than to doubt their words, but the weight of the situation was sinking in. "Are we talking about everyone suddenly having superpowers? Because that sounds like a recipe for disaster." "It's more than powers," Emma replied. "It's knowledge. Memories of who we used to be before the architects sealed us away. Memories of war, destruction, and everything we did to earn the title of sleeping gods. If we're not ready, it could tear us apart." Before anyone could respond, a deafening roar echoed through the chamber. The walls quaked violently, sending rocks tumbling from the ceiling. Outside, the storm intensified, lightning striking repeatedly, as if the sky itself were reacting to the chaos unfolding. Below, the townspeople huddled together, some clutching each other in fear, while others tried to keep their newly awakened abilities under control. Ethan stood shakily, his glowing hands pulsing brighter than ever. He could feel the energy building inside, him, pressing against his chest like a second heartbeat. It wasn't just his own power, it was the collective force of everyone in the room, amplified by their shared connection to the machine. He looked around at the faces of the people gathered there. Claire, whose telekinetic abilities allowed her to lift boulders without effort. Jake, whose speed made him a blur even in the dim light. And countless others whose gifts ranged from elemental manipulation to heightened senses. They were powerful, yes, but also scared, untrained, and dangerously unprepared. "We need to teach them how to control it," Ethan said firmly. "If we don't, they'll hurt themselves, or worse." Emma nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Together, they began organizing the group, splitting them into smaller teams based on their abilities. Those with physical powers, like strength or speed, practiced restraint, learning to focus their energy instead of letting it explode uncontrollably. Others with mental or emotional abilities worked on honing their concentration, using meditation techniques Emma pulled from the manuscript to help them stay grounded. Nathan took charge of logistics, ensuring the group remained safe and organized. Though he didn't possess any obvious powers himself, his calm demeanor and quick thinking proved invaluable. He coordinated efforts, kept morale high, and acted as a bridge between Ethan, Emma, and the rest of the townspeople. Slowly but surely, the chamber transformed from a place of panic into a makeshift training ground. Days passed, though time seemed irrelevant underground. Food supplies dwindled and exhaustion set in, but no one dared leave the cave. Above them, the world continued to change. Reports trickled in from beyond Silver Ridge, stories of people across the globe experiencing similar awakenings. Governments scrambled to respond, deploying military forces to contain outbreaks of chaos caused by those unable to control their newfound abilities. Cities burned, nations quarreled, and fear spread like wildfire. Back in the chamber, Ethan pushed himself harder than ever. Each day, he trained alongside the others, testing the limits of his powers and teaching them how to channel their emotions effectively. He learned that anger and fear amplified his strength, but also made him reckless, while calmness and focus allowed him to wield his abilities with precision. It was a delicate balance, one he struggled to maintain even as the pressure mounted. During one particularly intense session, Jake accidentally triggered a burst of speed so fast he phased through a solid wall. The impact left him unconscious, and for a moment, panic rippled through the group. But Claire used her telekinesis to gently pull him free, cradling him until he came to. The incident served as a sobering reminder of the risks they faced, not just from external threats, but from within themselves. Despite the challenges, bonds formed among the group. They weren't just strangers anymore. They were a team, united by a shared purpose. Even Nathan, who had initially been skeptical, found himself drawn into their cause. Watching Ethan and Emma lead with such determination inspired him to step up, offering guidance and support wherever needed. Then, without warning, the aliens arrived. A massive fleet descended from orbit, its ships blotting out the sun as they hovered menacingly above Earth. News of the invasion spread quickly, reaching Silver Ridge despite its remote location. The townspeople watched in stunned silence as footage of devastated cities played on. A small, portable screen someone had brought into the cave. Alien soldiers, tall and insect-like with gleaming exoskeletons, marched through streets littered with debris, their weapons firing beams of energy that reduced buildings to ash. "They're here for us," Emma whispered, her face pale. "They must have been monitoring the destabilization of the suppression field. Now that humanity's powers are awakening, they see us as a threat." Ethan clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. "Then we'll show them what happens when you mess with humans." Though fear lingered in the air, it was quickly replaced by resolve. The townspeople, once ordinary residents of a quiet mountain town, had become something more. Under Ethan and Emma's leadership, they prepared for battle, not out of hatred or vengeance, but because they had no other choice. This was their home, their planet, and they would defend it. Using the artifacts scattered throughout the chamber, Emma devised a plan. Some of the devices emitted protective fields, while others generated bursts of energy capable of disabling enemy technology. With careful coordination, they could use these tools to counter the alien forces. Meanwhile, Ethan led combat drills, teaching the group how to fight as a unit rather than as individuals. When the first wave of invaders reached Silver Ridge, the townspeople were ready. Hidden among the trees and rocky terrain, they launched a surprise attack, catching the aliens off guard. Claire used her telekinesis to hurl boulders at enemy ships, while Jake darted between soldiers too quickly for them to react. Others unleashed blasts of fire, ice, and electricity, turning the battlefield into a chaotic display of raw power. The fighting was brutal, and casualties were inevitable. During one skirmish, Jake sacrificed himself to save a group of children caught in the crossfire. His speed carried him directly into the path of an incoming energy blast, shielding them with his body. When the dust settled, Ethan knelt beside his fallen friend, grief etched into every line of his face. "He knew what he was doing," Emma said softly, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "He gave his life to protect others. That's what being human means." Tears streamed down Ethan's cheeks, but he forced himself to stand. There was no time to mourn, not yet. The battle wasn't over, and they couldn't afford to falter. Drawing on the lessons they'd learned, the group pressed forward, their unity stronger than ever. By the time reinforcements arrived, the aliens had retreated, their forces decimated. Word of Silver Ridge's victory spread rapidly, inspiring others to rise up against the invaders. Humanity, once divided and vulnerable, began to unite under a single banner, not as conquerors, but as defenders of their world. As the sun rose over the battered landscape, Ethan addressed the survivors, his voice steady despite the pain in his heart. "This isn't the end," he said. "It's only the beginning. We've reclaimed our power, but with it comes responsibility. Let's make sure we use it wisely, for peace, not destruction." And with that, humanity took its first steps toward reclaiming its place among the stars. The machine at the center of the chamber pulsed with increasing intensity, its energy growing unstable. The cracks in the projection of Earth widened, and shards of light shot out like lightning, illuminating the cavern in bursts. Ethan, Emma, and Nathan stood close together, their faces pale but resolute. They knew they were running out of time. "We need to stabilize it," Emma said, her voice trembling. "If the field collapses completely, there's no telling what will happen." "But how?" Ethan asked, his glowing hands shaking. "We don't even know how this thing works." Emma stepped closer to the machine, examining the shifting patterns on its surface. She traced one of the symbols with her finger, causing it to glow faintly in response. Her eyes narrowed as she studied the manuscript again, flipping through pages frantically. Finally, she stopped and pointed to a diagram. "Look," she said. "This is the core, the heart of the suppression field. If we can recalibrate it, maybe we can slow down the collapse." "And if we mess up?" Nathan asked, his tone cautious. "Then we risk waking everyone at once," Emma admitted. "And that could be catastrophic." Ethan clenched his fists, his frustration mounting. "How are we supposed to fix something built by aliens? We're just people." "You're more than that now," Emma replied firmly. "You've seen what you can do, Ethan. Trust yourself." Nathan watched the exchange silently, his mind racing. He had spent years following orders, relying on protocols and procedures. But none of that mattered here. This was uncharted territory, and they were on their own. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward. "Tell me what to do," he said, surprising even himself. "I'm not leaving until we figure this out." Emma nodded, grateful for his support. Together, the three of them worked to decipher the machine's mechanisms. Ethan focused on the physical aspects, using his newfound strength to adjust parts of the device when needed. Emma analyzed the patterns and symbols, piecing together the logic behind them. Nathan acted as their anchor, keeping an eye on the chamber's environment and ensuring they stayed safe. As they worked, Ethan began to notice something strange. Every time he touched the machine, it responded differently depending on his emotions. When he felt calm, the energy stabilized slightly. But when anger or fear crept in, the machine flared unpredictably. It was as if his feelings directly influenced the field. "I think I'm connected to it somehow," Ethan said, stepping back. "It reacts to me, like it's tied to my emotions." Emma frowned. "That makes sense. The architects designed the suppression field to suppress humanity's warlike tendencies. Maybe your emotional state affects the stability of the field." "So what does that mean?" Nathan asked. "Are we saying Ethan has to keep his cool while the world falls apart?" "It's not just about staying calm," Emma explained. "It's about balance. If Ethan can channel his emotions properly, he might be able to stabilize the field enough to buy us some time." Ethan nodded, though doubt lingered in his eyes. He wasn't sure he could control his emotions under pressure, especially when the stakes were so high. But he didn't have a choice. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath and focused on the task ahead. Outside the cave, the effects of the destabilizing field were becoming more apparent. Across Silver Ridge, people began experiencing strange changes. Claire Dawson, a farmer, who lived nearby, noticed her crops moving on their own, swaying as if caught in an invisible wind. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but then she realized she was doing it. Her thoughts were influencing the plants around her. In another part of town, Jake Monroe, a college student known for his speed on the track team, discovered he could run faster than ever before. He tested his limits cautiously, racing down empty streets and feeling the rush of adrenaline as he pushed past boundaries he never thought possible. Others in the town reported similar phenomena: levitating, objects, heightened senses, bursts of strength. Word spread quickly, drawing curious neighbors to the outskirts of town where the energy seemed strongest. Back in the chamber, Ethan, Emma, and Nathan heard distant voices echoing through the tunnels. People were coming. Whether drawn by instinct or curiosity, they were heading straight for the source of the disturbance. "We need to hurry," Emma urged, glancing toward the entrance. Once they get here, things could spiral out of control. Ethan placed his hands on the machine again, focusing on maintaining his composure. Slowly, the chaotic energy began to settle, the cracks in the projection of Earth shrinking slightly. But the effort drained him, sweat pouring down his face as he fought to keep his emotions in check. "It's working," Nathan said, watching the changes closely. "But you can't hold it forever." "I know," Ethan replied through gritted teeth. "We need a plan for after." Emma flipped through the manuscript one last time, searching for any clues about what came next. Her eyes landed on a passage describing the awakening ritual, a process that required unity and focus among participants. It wasn't detailed, but it gave her an idea. "If we can gather everyone who's been affected," she said, "we might be able to channel their energy into stabilizing the field, or at least controlling the awakening." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "You want to bring a bunch of strangers with unpredictable powers into this mess?" "It's our best shot," Emma insisted. "We can't do this alone." Reluctantly, Nathan agreed. Together, they prepared for the arrival of the townspeople, knowing it would be risky but necessary. When the first group arrived, led by Claire and Jake, the atmosphere in the chamber shifted. The newcomers stared in awe at the glowing machine and the holograms surrounding them. Some looked frightened, others excited, but all shared a sense of wonder at what was happening to them. Emma stepped forward, addressing the crowd. "Listen, carefully," she said. "Something big is happening, not just to you but to everyone. We don't fully understand it yet, but we know it's connected to humanity's past. Right now, the barrier that kept our powers suppressed is breaking. If we don't act, it could unleash chaos." "What do you want us to do?" Claire asked, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "We need your help," Emma replied. "Ethan is stabilizing the field right now, but he can't do it alone. If we work together, if we focus our energy, we might be able to regain control." Jake crossed his arms skeptically. "And if we fail?" "Then we'll deal with the consequences as they come," Emma said firmly. "But standing here doing nothing isn't an option." One by one, the townspeople nodded, agreeing to try. They formed a circle around Ethan and the machine, placing their hands on its surface or simply closing their eyes and concentrating. As they did, the chamber filled with a soft golden light, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Ethan felt the weight of their combined energy flowing through him, amplifying his connection to the machine. For the first time since the ordeal began, he felt a glimmer of hope. With everyone working together, they might stand a chance. Outside the cave, the sky darkened as storm clouds gathered overhead. Lightning flashed in the distance, casting eerie shadows across the landscape. The destabilization of the suppression field was affecting not only humans, but the planet itself. Time was running out. Inside the chamber, the machine emitted a final, deafening hum before falling silent. The cracks in the Earth's projection sealed shut and the energy dissipated. Exhausted, Ethan collapsed to his knees, supported by Emma. And Nathan. "We did it," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. "For now, at least." But as the townspeople cheered softly, a shadow passed over Nathan's expression. He glanced toward the entrance, sensing that this victory was only temporary. Whatever force had triggered the awakening in the first place was still out there, and it wasn't done with them yet. Ethan and Emma stood frozen in the vast underground chamber, their hearts racing as the mechanical voice repeated its ominous message. The air around them seemed to hum with energy, and the holographic projections flickered erratically. Scenes of ancient battles between humans and alien forces played out before their eyes, showing humanity wielding powers that defied logic, blasts of energy erupting from their hands, shields forming out of thin air, and entire fleets crumbling under their might. Emma took a hesitant step forward, her gaze fixed on one of the floating images. In it, she saw humans standing tall among the stars, their faces illuminated by glowing symbols etched into their armor. They looked like gods, untouchable and unstoppable. But there was something else in their expressions. A weight, a burden, as if they carried the consequences of their power with every breath. "What does this mean?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. His glowing hands were still faintly pulsing, reacting to the strange energy filling the room. "Are we supposed to do something?" "I don't know," Emma replied, clutching the old manuscript tightly. She flipped through its pages again, searching for any clue about what was happening. Her fingers traced over the shimmering coordinates. She had followed earlier, now certain they were meant to lead them here. "But I think we're part of this, somehow." The chamber grew colder, and the ground beneath their feet vibrated slightly. One of the artifacts embedded in the wall, a jagged, crystal-like structure, began to emit a low, resonant hum. It pulsed in time with Ethan's heartbeat, drawing him closer despite his growing unease. He reached out instinctively, his hand hovering just above its surface. A spark of light leapt from the artifact to his palm, sending a jolt of energy coursing through his body. "Don't touch it," Emma shouted, rushing toward him. But it was too late. The moment the energy connected with Ethan, the room came alive. More holograms appeared, this time depicting not battles, but moments of devastation. Planets reduced to ash, civilizations wiped out in an instant. The voice returned, calm yet chilling. Humanity's potential activated. Consequences imminent. Emma grabbed Ethan's arm and pulled him back. "We need to figure this out before things get worse. Whatever's happening, it's not just affecting you. It's affecting everyone." Back in Washington, D.C., Nathan Brooks sat at his desk in a dimly lit office, scrolling through reports flooding in from across the country. Strange phenomena had been reported in small towns and cities alike, people exhibiting inexplicable abilities, objects moving without explanation, and bursts of energy leaving craters in streets. As a government agent tasked with investigating unusual occurrences, Nathan was used to dealing with bizarre cases. But this was different. This felt big. His phone buzzed, pulling him away from his thoughts. It was a call from his superior, demanding updates on the situation. Nathan sighed, rubbing his temples. "Sir, I'm doing everything I can. These incidents are scattered, but there's a pattern emerging. Something's triggering changes in people." "Find the source," the voice on the other end ordered, "and contain it before it escalates." Nathan hung up and stared at the map pinned to his wall. Red dots marked locations where anomalies had occurred, forming a loose trail leading toward Silver Ridge. He had never heard of the town before, but something told him it held answers. Grabbing his coat, he headed out, determined to uncover the truth. Meanwhile, back in Silver Ridge, Ethan and Emma continued exploring the chamber. They discovered more artifacts, each one radiating a unique form of energy. Some glowed softly, while others crackled with electricity. Emma examined them carefully, piecing together fragments of information from the holograms and the manuscript. Slowly, a clearer picture began to emerge. The suppression field, she explained, pointing to a diagram projected onto the wall. It's like a barrier that kept humanity's powers locked away. The architects, they're the ones who created it. They didn't want us using our abilities because of what we did in the past. Ethan frowned. What did we do? Emma hesitated, her expression darkening. We destroyed worlds, whole civilizations. The architects thought they were helping us by sealing away our powers, but now, she trailed off, gesturing to the destabilizing artifacts around them. Something's breaking the field. Someone, or something, is waking us up. Before they could discuss it further, the ground shook violently, knocking them off balance. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a narrow passageway bathed in blue light. The same mechanical voice echoed again, this time more urgent. Reactivation sequence accelerating. Prepare for awakening. Ethan and Emma exchanged a glance. Neither of them wanted to venture deeper into the unknown, but they knew they had no choice. If the suppression field truly was collapsing, they needed to understand why and how to stop it. As they made their way through the passageway, the walls shifted and changed, displaying new holograms that revealed the architect's perspective. These beings, tall and slender with elongated limbs and luminous skin, had observed humanity from afar. They admired humanity's creativity and resilience, but feared their destructive tendencies. When humans began conquering planets and wiping out entire species, the architects intervened, creating the suppression field to prevent further chaos. But the field hadn't been perfect. Over millennia, cracks had formed, allowing glimpses of humanity's true potential to seep through. Now those cracks were widening, threatening to unleash powers humanity wasn't ready to handle. This is insane, Ethan muttered, running, a hand through his hair. How are we supposed to fix this? We're just ordinary people. You're not ordinary anymore, Emma said firmly. Neither am I. Look at your hands, Ethan. You've already changed. And if we don't figure this out, others will too, and they might not have control. Her words weighed heavily on him. He glanced down at his palms, which still glowed faintly. He had felt anger and fear fuel his strength earlier, but he also remembered the destruction it caused. What would happen if he lost control completely? At the end of the passageway, they entered another chamber, larger and more elaborate than the first. At its center stood a massive machine humming with energy. Intricate patterns covered its surface, shifting and rearranging themselves like living code. Above it floated a projection of Earth surrounded by swirling clouds of data. This must be the core of the suppression field, Emma whispered, her voice filled with awe. If we tamper with it, we could either stabilize the field or destroy it entirely. And if we destroy it? Ethan asked, dread creeping into his tone. We awaken fully, Emma replied, her eyes meeting his. Everyone. All at once. Hours later, Nathan arrived in Silver Ridge, following the trail of reports that had led him there. The town seemed eerily quiet, its streets deserted. Locals he spoke to mentioned strange lights coming from the mountains and warned him to stay away. Ignoring their advice, he drove toward the source, eventually finding himself near the cave entrance. Inside, the air was thick with tension. He moved cautiously, guided by faint sounds of movement ahead. When he reached the main chamber, he found Ethan and Emma standing near the massive machine, deep in conversation. Seeing them, he stepped forward, his hand resting on the holster of his gun. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice sharp. "And what's going on here?" Ethan turned, startled, while Emma quickly explained their discovery. Nathan listened intently, his skepticism giving way to disbelief as he witnessed Ethan's glowing hands and the holograms surrounding them. For a moment, he considered calling for backup, but something stopped him. There was a sincerity in their voices, a desperation that rang true. If what you're saying is real, Nathan said finally, then we're dealing with something far beyond anything I've ever seen. We need to report this to someone higher up. No, Emma interrupted. If word gets out, governments will try to weaponize this. They'll turn humanity's awakening into a war. We can't let that happen. Nathan hesitated, torn between duty and reason. Before he could respond, the machine emitted a deafening roar, and the projection of Earth began to fracture. Cracks spread across its surface, releasing waves of energy that rippled outward. The suppression field was breaking apart. We're running out of time, Ethan said, gripping Emma's shoulder. We have to make a choice. Nathan watched as the two of them turned back to the machine, their faces set with determination. Whatever decision lay ahead, it was clear they weren't backing down. Reluctantly, he joined them, knowing that whatever happened next would change everything, for better or worse. The town of Silver Ridge lay quiet under the blanket of night. Nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains, it was the kind of place where people knew each other by name and life moved at a slow, predictable pace. Ethan Cole lived here, working as a mechanic in his small garage on the edge of town. He wasn't anyone special, just a man who liked fixing cars, listening to old radio shows, and keeping to himself. But all that changed one restless evening when strange dreams began haunting him. Ethan tossed and turned in bed, sweat beading on his forehead. The dreams were vivid, almost too real. In them, he saw vast fields of stars stretching endlessly across the sky. Battles raged between glowing figures wielding weapons made of pure light. Explosions lit up the darkness, and voices whispered words he couldn't understand but felt deeply in his chest. When he woke up, heart pounding, the images lingered like shadows at the edge of his mind. At first he thought it was just stress or something he ate before going to sleep. But then the dreams kept coming, night after night, growing more intense with each passing day. One morning, while tightening bolts on an old truck in his garage, Ethan noticed something odd. His hands glowed faintly, a soft golden hue that pulsed, whenever he clenched his fists. Startled, he dropped the wrench and stumbled back, staring at his trembling palms. The glow faded quickly, leaving behind only confusion. Was he imagining things? Sleep deprivation? Maybe he needed to see a doctor. Yet deep down, Ethan knew this wasn't normal. Something inside him had shifted, awakened, and he didn't know why. Across town, Emma Hayes sat hunched over a desk, in the dimly lit corner of the local library. She loved her job as a librarian because it allowed her to explore stories from different times and places. That afternoon, she had been sorting through donations when she found an ancient-looking book tucked away in a box labeled Miscellaneous. Its cover was cracked and worn, but what caught her attention was the peculiar symbol embossed on the front, a spiral surrounded by tiny dots. Curious, she opened it and flipped through its yellowed pages. Most of the text was written in a language she didn't recognize, but toward the end she came across a section written in English. The passage spoke of humans as sleeping gods, beings of immense power locked away behind barriers placed by an unknown force. It described how these powers could reshape worlds, topple civilizations, and bring both creation and destruction. Emma read the words aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. As she reached the final line, ink on the page shimmered and rearranged itself into a set of coordinates pointing somewhere nearby. Her breath hitched. This wasn't just some dusty old myth. It felt alive, urgent, like it wanted her to act. Emma grabbed her coat and headed out, following the directions scrawled on a scrap of paper. They led her to a remote area outside of town, where dense trees gave way to rocky terrain. There, nestled among moss-covered boulders, was the entrance to a cave. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should go in alone, but curiosity got the better of her. Pulling out her phone for light, she stepped inside. Meanwhile, Ethan's strange condition worsened. Later that same day, while arguing with a customer over a repair bill, his emotions boiled over. Anger surged through him, and suddenly, the metal workbench beneath his hands crumpled like paper. The customer stared, wide-eyed, and Ethan stammered an apology before rushing outside to catch his breath. He leaned against the wall of his garage, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Whatever was happening to him, it was tied to those dreams, and he needed answers. By sheer coincidence, or perhaps fate, Ethan decided to take a walk that evening to clear his head. Following no particular path, he wandered farther than usual until he found himself standing near the mouth of the same cave Emma had discovered earlier. Drawn by an inexplicable pull, he ventured inside. The air grew cooler as he descended deeper into the cavern, guided only by the faint glow emanating from his hands. It wasn't long before he heard footsteps echoing off the walls. Turning a corner, he came face to face with Emma, who nearly jumped out of her skin upon seeing him. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, two strangers united by shared bewilderment. Then Emma broke the silence. "What are you doing here?" she asked, clutching the manuscript tightly to her chest. I don't know," Ethan admitted. "I've been having these weird dreams, and now my hands do this." He held them up, letting the golden light flicker briefly. "You?" Emma hesitated before showing him the book. "This is why I'm here. It talks about us, about humans being more than we think. I think whatever's happening to you might be connected." Before either of them could say more, a low hum filled the air. The ground beneath their feet trembled slightly, and a faint blue light spilled from a crack in the wall ahead. Cautiously, they approached and pushed aside a loose rock, revealing a hidden chamber beyond. Inside, strange artifacts jutted out from the stone walls, pulsating with energy. One of them, an orb-like device covered in intricate patterns, reacted violently to Ethan's presence. A burst of light shot out, knocking them both off their feet. When they came to, they found themselves lying on the floor of an even larger room. The ceiling stretched high above them, supported by massive pillars carved with alien symbols. Holographic. Projections floated in mid-air, displaying scenes of battles fought among the stars. Humans stood at the center of it all, clad in armor that seemed to radiate power. Their faces were fierce, determined, yet tinged with sorrow. Emma scrambled to her feet, eyes wide with awe. This is real. Everything in the book. It's true." Ethan rubbed his temples, overwhelmed. "So what does that mean for us? Why are we seeing this now?" As if in response, a mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. "Suppression field destabilizing. Reactivation sequence initiated." A wave of dread washed over them. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than either of them could have imagined. They exchanged a glance, knowing instinctively that their lives, and possibly the fate of humanity, were about to change forever.